Here's one of the most frustrating things about building houses and being in this business and in any type of housing business is that it's the most important investment that 90% of the people make in this country is their house. It's the way we pass wealth to our children as our property appreciates. It's a huge thing, and 90% of the people don't know enough about their house to change the air filter in the air conditioner unit. It's a shame that people don't put a little bit more energy into learning how a house works as a system.
Welcome, everybody. Today we have on our podcast Paul Peebles, who works for Sashco, but Paul has a pretty interesting background.
Right. Yep. He is back with us again, and this time we're going to talk about energy efficiency in log homes and stick frame homes, and in all construction.
I love blower door testing, and Paul has probably done more blower door testing on log homes than any person that I've ever met. And it's really interesting to hear some of the stories of things he's found in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's taught me a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know. I can't say I'm super familiar with how exactly it works, so I'm excited to hear more about, like, specifically how you actually go through and do the process. So I also would love to see one day. So maybe I'll get lucky. And
yeah, I got to do one with Paul on one of our homes, and it was very eye-opening. It was just very, very interesting, and I was very excited because the house did extremely well.
No surprise there.
Yeah. Everyone, please enjoy our episode. Hi, this is Lynn.
And this is Lacey.
And I'm Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Acorn and Leaf Podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Paul. This is your third podcast you've done for us. We really appreciate you sharing all your knowledge with us.
First two were so good, we had to bring you back again.
I don't know if you call what I do sharing. I just kind of spew forth stuff. It's a kind of a stream of consciousness thing, and I apologize for the way I come across sometimes. But I do enjoy talking about log houses. I've been doing it for 30 years, and every day I try to help somebody with their house.
Well, you sure do. I know that we've gained a lot of knowledge from you as well, and I hope that we've shared some of our knowledge with you too over the many 30 some odd years that we've been talking about log homes on a one-on-one level. But tell us, one of the things we wanted to talk about today is a little bit different from your experience with Sashco, some of your other experiences that you've had. I know that you were doing energy audits and doing blower door testing on homes and kind of specialized in doing that on log homes. And I'd like for you to share with everyone what a blower door test is, how they would, if somebody wanted to do a blower door test, how they would go about having it done, and then some of the things that you have learned from doing these blower door tests. So with that said, I'll just let you explain all these things to everybody.
Well, I got into it because back in the 90s, somebody brought in this little beetle that looked like a ladybug, a little Japanese beetle, and they started infesting homes, not just log homes, but they got into houses. And when I built my log house, ours burned, remember, and I had to rebuild it. And I was in a hurry, and I went down there to spend Thanksgiving and could hardly stay in it because I had ladybugs and wasps and everything else in there. And at that time at Sashco, there was a guy named Tracy who did blower door testing. He had an infrared camera. He did blower door testing, and he became a good friend of mine. And he came. I said, "Come down to my house. I got all these problems." And so he comes in there and he takes this blower door. Now, what's a blower door? It's an adjustable frame with a cloth mechanism in the middle of it, and it fits into a door tightly. And then there's a place where you put a fan in it. And it's all just it looks complicated, but this fan is attached to a computer, and then you enter a bunch of information about the house, and it starts sucking the air out of the house. And what it does, it tries to simulate a 25 mile an hour wind coming from all sides at once on a home. So it pulls a vacuum in there, and over a period of time, the computer measures how much air is flowing through that house. They call it ACH, air changes per hour. And my house at that particular time, when I got done with it, was doing about 10 air changes an hour. So I was changing all the oxygen, all the air in my house. The volume of air was moving through my walls or out my ceiling at a great rate. And then at the same time, we used an infrared camera to find where those places were. It turned out it was the ceiling, because I have a tongue and groove ceiling in my log home, and I always thought that the T might stand for tight, but it doesn't. When in tongue and groove, it's actually fairly loose. And it turned out that I just really needed to caulk my ceiling. If I'd have put it together, if I'd have known what I knew now, I would have put a better vapor barrier up above it. Would have stopped a lot of that. And then there was windows and doors and things in some of the corners that we caulked. And now I think the highest energy bill we've had was probably 2 years ago. Of course, energy's gone up, but we don't live in that house. But I think it was $130 to heat a 1,400 square foot house. So it's a very energy efficient way to do it. I remember when I tested your house many years ago, it had blown in cellulose, I think was the insulation in the ceiling, but it tested at 1.9 air changes per hour, which is tight enough so that you really, for fresh air in a house with X amount of bedrooms or people living in it, you have to have a certain amount of air changes per hour for health. So that house needed actually to bring in extra ventilation through these heat exchange methods that they use now with these modern things. And I haven't done this in a long time, and I was an Energy Star rater. What's an Energy Star rater? Everybody knows what Energy Star is. You buy a water heater or whatever, and it tells you, hey, well, this is an Energy Star, and it's been tested under these methods. Well, that's the same way they test a house. Energy Star came up with very complicated, very strict, but very accurate ways to measure the efficiency of a house. It has to do with the roof overhangs. It has to do with the climate you're in, the zones. So if you're in the South and you had a shed roof that hung off the south-facing wall and kept the house shady in the summertime, you get credits for that. And there's just a way to rate a house. I found it very efficient, very eye-opening to go into all types of houses and see how poorly built some of them were.
And to clarify something real fast, kind of back up, so a blower door test, you're actually sucking air out. You're not blowing air in.
Yes.
Okay, so it's
Correct.
kind
You
of
suck it out.
Kind of opposite of what the name implies.
You create a vacuum, and when we used to try to do this on a day where it was either very hot outside or very cool outside, so that there's a big temperature difference between the inside and outside. So that way, when you start sucking air out, it would draw air in the voids where around a window that's not sealed correctly, right. or in my case, it was through the tongue and groove, because I just had, at that time, I had pink insulation up in the thing. That's all we had available in 95. And that stuff is not very efficient.
Not great. You're in the middle. You suck all the air out, and you're inside of it, and you're using the infrared camera to take pictures all over that then you look at to kind of analyze to see where you're losing. Gotcha.
Yeah, because you could see air entering around the door, around a window, in a corner that wasn't caulked correctly or something like that. And you can see it. It shows up bright on an infrared picture. Everybody's seen that where, way back in the 70s or 80s, they were chasing some poor guy down the road with a helicopter with a FLIR camera. There he goes. He's hiding in the garage. And the cops are chasing him. So anyway, that was my first exposure to infrared. I was on the lam one night and they came after me. But anyway,
did they catch you?
So yeah. There are lots of ways to do it, and that technology's really come a long way now. I mean, I can spot a pinhole in chinking at 50 feet away. So it's a really good way. And so, why did I do it? I wouldn't make any money off of it, but I bought the camera and spent all that time learning about it to help. And what I ended up doing was helping my customers, my log home manufacturing customers, build better houses. Because we didn't, as the log home industry started back in the 70s and 80s, nobody paid attention to energy. It's just build a house. But then as we all evolved, or the codes evolved, we had to build better houses. Plus, a better house Air tightness is important because it has to do with how a house works as a system. All the parts and pieces of that house to work together to create a crisp, clean atmosphere inside the house at the correct humidity, at the correct temperature, so that people are comfortable inside it. You walk into, a well-built building somewhere, especially, commercial buildings that have been, their standards are even more strict than the residential ones. And that building is comfortable to you. Just kind of, you don't really ever notice it until you start thinking about it. Gosh, it feels nice in here. Well, why is that? Because they've got all these machines working, and they've done the balancing, and they've done all these things in the house or the building to make sure that it's right. It used to be that, you build a house and you'd walk in and you'd say, it's kind of breezy in here. And the builder would say, well, a house got to breathe. Well, it does have to breathe, but it needs to breathe in a controlled method so that the air that you bring in is preconditioned, it's filtered, and the air that goes out in certain ways. If you think about a house, like just think about a chimney, air goes in the bottom, and if it's hot, it goes out through the chimney at the top. Well, if you've got a leak in your ceiling, and so the hotter air, the good hot air or nice warm air that you've generated and paid a lot of money for is going out, well, then that creates a small vacuum in your house. That's where the cold, damp air would come in either through an unconditioned crawl space and your little cracks around the pipes. It would come in under doors, comes in low and goes out high, comes in low and cold and goes out hot and warmer and out. So that's how houses or any structure works. Hot air rises, cold air goes down. But if you got hot air going out the top, it's not going to, it'll go to a certain point. If the house is tight, it can't bring air in the bottom. So it holds it all in there and circulates correctly.
If you were advising someone on building a home, what are some of the things you've learned from doing blower door tests that you would advise them to make their house as energy efficient as possible, that you would advise them to do, or what to watch out for?
A smaller percentage of heat exchange or heat loss, they call it, or heat gain is through the walls. Most of it is up and down. So I would always say, if you're building a crawl space, build a conditioned crawl space. If you are going to build on a slab, then I would say that the best way to heat that house and cool it would be through the slab itself. The newer heat pumps that they have that pipe water through the slabs, they're really pretty cool. And find somebody that knows how to hang a door. I mean, I was no telling how many times I would go into a house and turn the thing on and the door would just come flying open, or it was crooked, and you could see in the frame it was crooked, and the weather strip wasn't engaging. That's a huge place for air to come in. You don't think about it, but an eighth of an inch crack in the bottom of a door, 3 feet wide, what's an eighth times 36 is an opening that's about 3 square inches. Well, that's a lot of opening.
Right.
I've done conventional houses where they had about 2 square feet of openings in a 2,000 square foot house. I mean, that's like leaving a window open a foot in your house all the time. And it's very detrimental. So I said when we were talking earlier that spray foam was one of the best things that I've ever seen for houses. Make sure that you get really good insulation contractor to come and put spray foam, where it belongs in the ceiling, and condition your crawl space. Make sure that you do like Gaston does, and just do things triple inside the log walls and make sure that they don't leak, and all the things that you do around windows and doors, and make sure that they don't leak also. And you'll have a house that's very comfortable and one that is less maintenance in the long run for you. I mean, it's a real telltale sign when I walk into a house and first you smell kind of a little musty odor, and you look around and you see a lot of dust, or you see bugs underneath the windows. I mean, how do bugs get in the house? They didn't come in logs. They don't come in your plants when you come in the fall. They come in through cracks. These things are trying to survive. They can almost see an infrared, and they seek out the heat when it starts turning cold in the fall, and they come in to overwinter in your house. And the only way to do that is to have a tight house. I mean, I beat them in my house for a long time. Then all of a sudden, about 3 years ago, they started showing up again. And I realized, hey, the house is 30 years old, and some of the gaskets had worn out underneath my doors, and insects were coming in. Get an Energy Star rater to come test your house just about the time you get the trim in it, or just before you put the trim in, so that you can do the caulking that you'd like to do and then put the trim over it so that the caulking doesn't show. It's a lot easier. You don't have to be as careful with it. And make sure that you follow the Gastineau construction manual to make sure that you seal the logs correctly. Condition a crawl space, or make sure that you seal the logs to a slab if you do it that way. Follow those directions and you're 90% there.
Yeah, I think that what Lynn has said many times is that when you're building a house, there's certain things that you don't want to skip on. And obviously what you build your house out of is one of them. But also I think that the insulation that you choose is also very important, and not somewhere if you have, you want to direct any additional funds to it, because you really can't go. I mean, it kind of depends on the design, but you really can't go back and re-insulate. It's a huge project to do something like that. So you got to get one shot at it spend more money on it, and it will pay itself back.
Yeah, one thing most people don't realize that air will go right through fiberglass insulation. Air will go right through it. And so some of the things I've seen, and it's really worse in the more northern climates, where people they put the paper-backed fiberglass insulation up in their ceiling, and they don't put a vapor barrier because they think the paper is going to serve as their vapor barrier. Then they put a tongue and groove ceiling up, and the air is going right through the tongues and right out through the roof. I mean, it's just going straight through. And then you get condensation from where that hot air is hitting the cold air, and then they get water dripping from the inside of their ceiling, and they think their roof is leaking, and actually it's just condensation. So having proper vapor barrier, and if you're going to have fiberglass insulation, you have to have the correct ventilation in your roof. It's got to be vented. And so those are the two things that I've seen from that people have done that have really caused problems by lack of vapor barrier.
And we'll be right back. I know. We get it. You've been sitting there, driving in your car, maybe you're running on a jog on a beautiful morning, listening to this podcast and thinking about building your log home. So we made it easy for you. Start your journey with us here at Gastineau Log Homes. Family owned, women led, and proudly crafting oak log homes since 1977. As the largest oak log home manufacturer in America, we're here to help bring your dream, big or small, to life. You can call our office at 573-896-5122 or swing by the National Model Home Center here in Kingdom City, Missouri, or even visit us online at oakloghome.com to get started, because your dreams never look so good. While you're listening to this podcast, did you find yourself loving or imagining the smell of sawdust or the thrill of closing a deal? Well, good, because we're hiring. From the mill to sales to design to even shipping, there's a place for you at Gastineau Log Homes. You can apply today at oakloghome.com/careers. If you've been enjoying the Acorn and Leaf podcast, do us a quick favor. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more folks who love log home living find us and join the conversation, which is such an awesome community. And hey, if you love what we do here at Gastineau Log Homes, head over to Google and leave us a review there as well. It means the world to us and keeps the dream growing. Thanks for listening and for being part of the Gastineau family. Back to the show.
If you've ever done any remodeling on a house and you've torn a wall out and you see that the pink insulation has turned brown in places, well, it didn't turn brown because the sun hit it. It turned brown because it's actually filtering dirt out of the air that's coming through your walls. If you've ever, gone into, there's not a lot of carpet in houses anymore, but if you've ever taken the carpet up and you go up against the wall and it's dirty out about 3 feet or 2 feet, it's because the carpet is filtering air that's coming out from underneath that wall because there wasn't a proper seal between the wall and the sill. This house, when I'm sitting in now, it was built in the early 60s. And so we went to do a remodel, and I said, well, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. So in our house, we took 2 bedrooms and tore all the drywall out. Well, guess what was between us and outside? There was some bricks there, but there was some blackboard and then this kind of foil stuff that was on there. And turned out that's the south facing part of our house that we remodeled into a master bedroom, and we used spray foam in there. It was so hot in those two rooms when my kids were growing up that they would come out and sleep downstairs in the summer sometime. We put spray foam in there and then put new drywall in. I mean, it's the difference between spray foam and pink insulation is the difference between an old metal Coleman cooler and a Yeti. It's
Right.
just such a huge difference. And one of the biggest differences in a Yeti is not necessarily the insulation in it, but it's that it's airtight. I mean, there's times when you can't open the darn things because it's hot when you put ice in there, and then it cools it down and creates suction. You can't. They have a little button on some of them that you can burp them so you can open them. The airtightness is a big deal, and it's a huge deal, and it's one of the few things that in the codes that I've agreed with over the years. Are this and are that really doesn't mean much to me, but airtightness does, and it brings instant gratification. You can take an old house like this with no insulation and airtighten it and have a house that you can live in. I mean, I spend less than $200 a month here heating and cooling this house that's built in the 60s. So it's a huge difference.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that the whole thing about R value is just so frustrating because R value is not what makes your house energy efficient. It's your air infiltration is the primary thing.
Air infiltration and controlling how air moves through a house, make sure it doesn't go out the top, where that air that you've paid so much to warm up and to dehumidify and get it where it feels nice inside a house. And that's unfortunate about logs that they don't measure them in a correct way. There's no real way to do it, but there's thermal mass. What is thermal mass? That means if there's a rock in the middle of a field and it's a huge rock and the sun comes up and it's 20 degrees at night, and then the sun comes up and heats that rock up and it goes up to 60, it kind of means that rock's going to stay somewhere in the 45-degree range because it's going to take on heat during the day and then let it go out at night as it cools off out there. And that's kind of what logs do. They absorb some energy during the day and stay warm. Even, I've seen a log wall in the wintertime when it's 40 degrees in Colorado. You take a picture of an infrared camera, that wall is 140 degrees in the mountains of Colorado in the wintertime. So it's giving that energy back to you at night when it's cooling off outside. And as long as you're not losing air, you got a good tight house. It's the correct tightness and it's ventilated correctly. You just don't have those trouble. But you got a guy that said, well, my log wall is losing energy, but then you got a wall that's all glass. Well, I mean, a glass is one of the least energy efficient things, even with the argon vacuum, whatever, all they do, all this stuff. I hadn't kept up with the technology, but it's still not as efficient as a log wall or even as a 2x4 frame wall with fiberglass.
One of the things that I think that is, and you and I have talked about this over the years, and I think you were the one that actually brought this to my attention because I hadn't thought about it, was that with a frame wall, you have your insulation is hidden. You have no idea what's going on inside of that wall. Whereas with a log wall, you can see everything. You can get to it. So, like you say, your house 30 years later, you go back in, you need to do a little more caulking or checking or, on it, then you can fix it. But if that house is a frame house, where it's a lot harder to see what's going on and realize what's happening to that wall.
Yeah, some of the most surprised people are the ones that open up a wall and see what's actually back there. There's beehives in there sometimes. There's all kinds of stuff that's in there, rodents, and they can't hide in a log wall.
Yeah, that's just, I've always said, the log, when you build a frame house, the insulation is as highest, the best quality it's ever going to be the lifespan of the house. With a log wall, it doesn't change. A 50-year-old log is going to have the same R value as a brand new log. The RV doesn't decrease like it does in every other type of insulation. So I think that's another big advantage of log construction.
That's correct. I mean, I used to go into conventional houses, 2x4 with pink stuff in there. And with the infrared camera, you can actually see into that wall and you can see where the bats have fallen and there's just basically just drywall and siding on the outside. So you could see where it deteriorated.
We talked about some of the design elements in log home construction, that we have a lot of our customers, and me being one of them as well, is having big window walls and also big vault ceilings that are typical of those window walls. Talk about the challenges you face in trying to heat and cool spaces like that.
It's tougher. I mean, you're going to have to move air because the hot air is natural. If it's wintertime and your hot air is 20 feet up and you're 5 feet 8 inches tall, you're going to be cold. So you're going to have to move that air, and not just the air that's coming out of your vents. You have to move it, but you want to move it gently. So basically, what I do is reverse my fans and have that air, it pulls them up and then pushes the warm air back down the walls. Makes it a lot more comfortable in my log house. And there's other technology that's come up with in the last several years, and I haven't kept up with it, but there's other ways of moving that air. But just know that if you build a house with 24-foot ceilings, it's going to be more of a challenge, and it's going to cost more to heat it and in the wintertime. But make sure that it's airtight. At least you have a chance when it's airtight to keep it comfortable. If it's not airtight, then it's going to be a lot more trouble and more expensive.
And that heating, the heat rising and the cool falling. And another thing is, if they're depending on how your heating system, air conditioning systems work, actually, if you can have vents where air conditioning can come out higher in the toward the ceiling where that cooling can fall, you actually get more benefit out of your air conditioning.
Correct.
Have you? One thing you mentioned a couple of times was conditioned crawl space, and I think a lot of people may not realize what that is. Do you want to describe what you mean by a conditioned crawl space?
The best way for me to tell something is tell a story, and it's a true story, because when I built my log house in '95, I built it on a crawl space, and I did what you're supposed to do. I went under there and jammed all that insulation up under there and put the vents in it, and all that kind of doohickey. And then we had this huge flood in 2010. When I rebuilt that house, I built it 6 feet out of the 200-year floodplain, and I got 10 inches of water in it. So it obviously destroyed everything under the house. So we had to go in there and rip out all that insulation. And this was a huge flood in Nashville. I mean, there was billions of dollars worth of damage done to houses, and there was people waiting around, because there were no. What they would typically do, they go in and they pull a bunch of all the insulation out, and then they pull a bunch of plywood up and try to let it just dry out. Well, I'm like, I'm not going for that. So we went in there and pulled it all out, and we put new vapor barriers down on the dirt and pleated them to the walls. And then we put 2 huge dehumidifiers under there. And in 10 days, our plywood, or the subfloor in our house, was down to 7%. So then we went in and had a guy come in and spray foam the block walls, the stem walls, and then up into the rim joists where most of the penetrations are. And we covered up. We went in and plugged up where every wire penetrated through the house from the floor, and it's a brand new house. The floor now is 55 degrees or somewhere around that year round. So it's kind of warm in the wintertime and kind of cool in the summertime. It's a different house. I remember in my bedroom, there was a plug that kind of weeped moisture. And I'm like, dadgum, when I built this thing, I must have hit a pipe or something. So I pulled that plug out, never found anything. Well, when we had to tear that wall out and after that flood, I realized what I had done is I'd originally laid the bathroom out a different way, and I drilled 3 holes through the plate between that wall and the bathroom, my wall in my bedroom and the bathroom. And we changed it around. I never plugged those holes up. So what that actually was in my house, there was hot air rising, pulling the cold, nasty, moist air out from underneath my house and coming out around that plug that wasn't, the plug cover was not, didn't have little gaskets behind it. And that was the moisture coming up out of my crawl space and showing as water on the plywood. I had rough sawn plywood in between those rooms. So that much moisture came out of there. I remember years ago, I went to Charlie Daniels' house, and he had an antique log home.
The Charlie Daniels?
The Charlie Daniels, yes.
Just throw that name out there.
I met him for just a few minutes, but I'm just in there working on his house. So we went around with the infrared camera, and I said, Miss Daniels, do y'all have water leaking in up there? And she goes, we must have had a leak back when we were building it. I said, no, ma'am, you don't understand. So they had rafters that were going over the log wall, and there was a bird blocking in between the rafters. And on each rafter, on either side of it, you could see it looked like water was weeping down. That was the air that was coming through that joint that hadn't been caulked. and it had enough moisture in it, so it was making the logs look wet in those places. So there's enough moisture in the air that comes in for enough years, it will actually make a watermark on the wood. That's what happened to their house.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing. I've been to people's houses that would talk about their floors being cold, and you go to their house, and they've got a walkout basement that has no insulation in the subfloor, and none of the base. The walkout wall is just concrete with no insulation, and so the cold air is coming straight through that concrete wall and up through their floor. And so I mean it's real easy to see if you're going to have a walkout basement, you've got to insulate yourself, or crawl space that sticks up. You've got to insulate yourself away from the outside.
Here's one of the most frustrating things about building houses and being in this business, and any type of housing business, is that it's the most important investment that 90% of the people make in this country is their house. It's the way we pass wealth to our children as our property appreciates. It's a huge thing. And 90% of the people don't know enough about their house to change the air filter in the air conditioner unit. It's a shame that people don't put a little bit more energy into learning how a house works as a system. The plumbing and how it goes in and out and all these things. It's really frustrating. The mistakes that people make, because they just go in, it's always got granite countertops, or it's got this beautiful heavy timber roof system. I love it, but they don't quite realize that there's a crawl space down there with creepy crawlers in it, and there's moisture coming in and all that other stuff. So it would be nice if in high school or something where they taught a little bit about building science so people would understand about their house.
To all the smart home technology, that one of the biggest problems they have is that people don't understand how to run all these things. And I know myself. I mean, at my age, I would have a hard time figuring all these things out, and then things don't work, and then people are frustrated. And so we talked to Donna Peak a couple weeks ago on our podcast, and she was saying that people aren't spending as much money on the smart home technology as people might think, because of the fact that so many people don't know how to run it, and they don't want things breaking, because it's just like if you buy a car with power windows, those power windows are going to go out at some point in time,
So we're Leslie and I are going to travel today. I'm leaving in a little while, and when she gets home, I'm going to say, you need to go set the thermostat because I don't know how to do it. I mean, I never have learned.
Yeah.
I mean, when the house flooded, they put the new HVAC system in the log house, and my dad says, "Where's the little dial that I used to turn?" And I called that guy. I said, "Bring me a little dial." He goes, "We can't put those in anymore. It's a new deal." I'm like, "Well, how am I going to program this thing?" He goes, "Well, just don't use all that stuff. Just move it down." So,
No, it is the as technology improves and it works our way into how we build our homes, just like anything, the problem is that it doesn't always work. And then you've got to find somebody. Even if it doesn't work, you've got to find somebody to fix it, and you've got to find somebody qualified to fix it. And it just can create so many frustrating issues. And it's kind of like, can we just go back to the, back to what
turn
works?
it on, turn it off.
Yes, yeah. And
I just find a kid to fix whatever it is with myself. I tried to call my little brother for like a week, and he finally calls me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm here." I said, "I've been trying to call." He goes, "Well, I didn't go to call." Well, he blocked me somehow. His grandchildren were playing with his phone, and they blocked my number. I thought my little brother was mad at me or something. I mean, what the heck's the deal here? I thought my little brother blocked me.
it's broken. You didn't even know it.
Yeah, he didn't even know what he was doing either, and I had to have my kids send him a video on how to unblock it. We're old, but we still know how to fix things. So I'm doing it.
Lacey is always having to fix things for me. She's my personal IT department. And so it's going to be funny whenever her sons have to be fixing things for her. Then I'm going to sit back and go, ha, 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 ha.
I know they engineer these things. They think it's to be more simple because they think, well, everybody knows how to push on this, and you come to that, go to this. Like, so the simpler it gets, the more complicated it is for me. I mean, I want a menu that shows me what I want, and I can choose and I can fix it. But nowadays, it's all hidden behind something else.
Yeah, and I also find that, and this is all construction, this is all trades, but it can be a challenge to find. There's so many opinions about what is right and wrong. And it's not that everybody's wrong. It's just that, there are could be several correct answers for the same question, but you just don't know. But there's also a lot of really wrong ones, so you just don't know.
Depends on who's writer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who's more right? Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. But also there's a whole lot of bad advice and information out there. And, especially if you go on Facebook and you see these, you can see or TikTok, and it's just like, that person has no idea what they're talking about, but yet they're out there just, spewing information.
I tell you, do not go to try to get a log home education off of the internet. It is crazy with the different opinions you get out there from people.
Yeah, even in our little Facebook group, that we go to, construction maintenance,
Right.
Huge difference of opinions in there. Use bleach, don't use bleach, blah, 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 do this, do that. And these are professionals that do this every day. And there's still disputes about which is the best way to do things. And, I always just tell people, one of the biggest myths around is, and you find this from the 40s. What do you put on a log house to protect it outside? Well, we use used crankcase motor oil and transmission fluid, and we put it on there, and we've been doing it for 50 years. I'm like, okay, don't light a match.
Yeah. Yeah, but and I also think that the internet has made the world very small, right? You used to have, you would have conversations to get advice from people that lived in your region, in your area, because the North is very different from the South and East and West. Like, what you need to do to treat or prevent anything is very different. It can be very different from just geographically where you're located. So what a professional sees in the South is not what they're going to see in the North, and so sharing that information is not accurate, right? So it's just provided, allowed everybody from everywhere to come in and further information out there that just might not be wrong where they're at, but it's wrong for that particular person.
Which is one of the reasons we tried to do this do our podcast, is we're trying to educate people. Our podcasts are not intended to just be a sales vehicle trying to sell gas new log homes. We're trying to educate people on the advantages, pros, cons, everything of building a timber home as opposed to building a conventional stick framed home. And you can build a good stick frame home. I'm not saying you can't, but people need to be just as particular with that as they have a tendency to be with log home. I mean, people, we're very, we have a lot of research into how we stack our logs, why our logs are cut the way we are, what sealants we put between our logs, how we screw them together. I mean, that is a result of years of experience. And I think that's why a lot of people buy our homes, because of that knowledge. But they turn around and they'll just have anybody frame up a house, and there's a huge difference in the quality that you can get out of a frame home by the builder. And people don't realize that.
I was talking to a builder an hour ago, and he was talking about his framers. He said, we're putting an elevator in this house, and I've had the lead guy reframe the elevator shaft 3 times. And he said, if I wasn't on that job site every day, we'd have had to tear the thing down, because framers can't even frame anymore, or some of them can. I mean, there's lots of great framers out there, and there's lots of great this and that. It's just, to me, we 3 are a little bit different. I mean, I think we've got a little bit more character than most people. And I think log homes have more character than stick-built homes. And I love the little bit more rustic character to log and timber homes. It's not, drywall just doesn't excite me.
Well, that's why we started our QA visits back in 1999, where we send out someone to inspect every house while it's in the middle of construction, because we found that so many mistakes were being made during construction. And it's a win-win-win for the builders too, because then, most of them don't want to do it wrong. And so at that point in time, it's easy to fix it. Whereas after the house is done, it's hard to fix it. So if you can, and we've got builders that have built over 100 houses, and we still do a QA visit on every single one of them, because we want to sign off on it and say, yeah, this was built correctly.
Yeah, and technology changes too. There's new building materials and things that you guys have incorporated over the years, and that particular builder may not know how to do that. So that's why you do the QAs. It's a learning process, and it's control. to make sure that your customers get what they want.
You've had a ton of experience in both frame and log home, and it's hard to find somebody that's done a lot of blower door testing on log homes. And I was, remember I was with you and we did that blower door test, and it was really amazing to see exactly where air filtration would come in, and it was and it just shows up so easily, and it's really it was really fascinating to me.
Trouble is that most of the people, you can get a free blower door test, from your electric company or gas company or whoever, but all they do is come in and tell you, yeah, it leaks this much, but they don't tell you where and how. So if you don't do a blower door test in conjunction with an infrared camera, they can tell you, hey, do this, do that, but they can't tell you anything exact.
It's like your doctor saying that, yep, you're sick, but not going to tell you why.
You can Google blower door testing, and you can find companies that do that, and it's not really that cost prohibitive. And I know that in some states they have tax credits back for the cost of doing blower door tests.
Correct. And there's a new technology now. I don't even think I've even told you about this. It's called Aero Barrier or Aero Seal, AERO. So what they can do, and they do it on stick houses, is they come in right after the trim is done, and they actually pressurize the house. And then they put like lawn sprayers around inside the house that spray this mist. It's a silicone mist or something. And as it goes through an exit to the outside, it starts sealing that hole, and it'll seal gaps up to like 1/4 of an inch. And you can watch on the computer the things that it says, X amount of pascals, X amount of air changes per hour. It goes from 7 air changes an hour to 1.7, and they stop or whatever. But it's some cool stuff, and it costs $4,000 or $5,000. But Lord, it's a one-time deal. Depending on the size of the house, I'm sure the price will come down. But there's Aero Barrier or Aero Seal guys all around the country now.
That's interesting. And so one final question for you, Paul. When do you recommend as far as during construction, when do you recommend people do a blower door test?
I'd do it just before the interior trim goes on, because that way, it's lots of corners and spots like that, and you can caulk them more liberally and then cover it with trim.
Including your like ceiling and wall coverings as well, or just before, like door and window trim?
I would do the window trim, door and window trim first, but I'm talking about quarter round on the floors and all that kind of stuff, that type of
Gotcha.
trim. It's just easier to do it, because if you put a piece of trim up there, there's a leak behind it, and then you have to caulk both sides of the trim. That makes sense.
Right. Gotcha. Well, thank you very much for joining us once again. It's a pleasure as always.
Well, I love y'all. I'd do anything for you.
Well, we appreciate it, and we could probably do 2 or 3 more podcasts on different subjects. I know that we have had those kind of conversations over an adult beverage several times, and they can go on for hours and hours. So
I didn't tell you that I quit drinking, did I? Quit last night about 9:30.
Well, it was a holiday weekend, so yeah. Yeah.
All right, y'all be good. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Paul.
Paul.